to Chapter 11, Sustaining Aquatic Biodiversity. "20% of the world's coral reefs have been destroyed and another 20% have been damaged. Rising sea levels 10 to 25 centimeters during the past 2,100 years and 9 to 88 centimeters over the next century. We have removed more than one-half of the world's ecologically important mangrove forests. More than one-half of the world's coastal wetlands have disappeared. About 45% of the human population lives along coastal zones, and 80% of ocean pollution comes from land-based human activities, and similar pressures are growing in freshwater systems as well. More than 25% of annual fish catch consists of bycatch, non-target species that are thrown overboard dead or dying. About 75% of the world's commercially valuable fisheries have been overfished, and many have surpassed their sustainable limits. Modern industrial fishing can deplete 80% of target fish species in just 10 to 15 years. 90% of the large open ocean fish like tuna, swordfish, and marlin have disappeared since 1950. Overfishing can lead to commercial extinction, which occurs when it is no longer profitable to continue fishing the affected species. Rapidly increasing human impact, invisibility of problems, citizen unawareness, and lack of legal jurisdiction hinder protection of aquatic biodiversity. National and international laws and treaties help protect marine species. Some of these laws and treaties include U.S. Endangered Species Act of 1973, Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of 1975, U.S. Whale Conservation and Protection Act of 1976, Global Treaty on Migratory Species of 1979, International Convention on Biological Diversity, 1995. Reconciliation ecology involves restaurants or other commercial establishments working with conservation programs to both protect species and provide tourist revenue. Whales are air-breathing and must come to the surface to breathe. This makes them easy targets since they are large mammals and equipment for hunting them is so sophisticated. 8 of the 11 major species of whales have been driven to the point of commercial extinction, and the blue whale to the edge of biological extinction. The International Whaling Commission was established in 1946. It set quotas to prevent overharvesting. The U.S. banned all whaling in 1970 and banned all imports of whale products. A moratorium on whaling was imposed by governments of many non-whaling countries in 1986. This has dropped the number of whales killed from 42,480 in 1970 to about 1,200 in 2004. Japan, Norway, Iceland, Russia, and some small island countries continue to work to overthrow the IWC ban on commercial whaling and reverse the ban on purchase and sale of whale products. The blue whale has fewer than 10,000 in its present population and may never recover due to slow sexual maturation, low birth weight, and despite protection and non-hunting since 1964, biologists fear there are too few whales remaining for them to recover. Nations have established marine sanctuaries, but many are only partially protected. Nations have sovereignty over waters and seabed up to 12 miles offshore. The exclusive economic zone extends out 200 miles from shore, but too often these areas have not been regulated to sustain fish harvest. Rather, they have been overfished. There are about 1,300 marine protected areas, almost 200 in U.S. waters. However, most MPAs allow ecologically harmful activities like trawling, dredging, and resource extraction. According to a 2005 Millennium Ecosystem Assessment, less than 0.3% of the world's ocean area has fully protected marine reserve waters. In 2006, U.S. President George W. Bush created the world's largest protected marine area, 140,000 square miles, the Northwest Hawaiian Marine National Monument. Integrated coastal management is a community-based effort to develop and use coastal resources more sustainably. The idea is to find cost-effective, adaptable solutions to preserve biodiversity while meeting economic and social needs. This uses the principle of adaptive ecosystem management. The U.S. has 90 coastal counties working to establish management systems, but less than 20 have been implemented. Overfishing is a serious threat to biodiversity. One way to prevent overfishing is to develop better ways to protect fish populations. The maximum sustained yield mathematical model is used, but indications are that it has hastened the collapse of most commercially valuable stocks for several reasons. 1. Populations and growth rates are difficult to measure. 2. Sizes of fish stocks are often based on unreliable or underreported catch figures. 3. Harvesting a species at maximum sustainable yield can affect other target and non-target species. And 4. Fishing quotas are difficult to enforce. Some fishing communities regulate fish harvests on their own, and others work with the government to regulate them. Many community management systems are now co-managed, where community and government work together to manage fisheries. Central government sets quotas for various species, divides the quotas among communities. Government may also limit fishing season and regulate gear to be used. Each community then allocates its quota among members. Individual transfer quotas are assigned to each fisherman, and these can be bought, sold, or leased like private property. This has resulted in some reduction of overfishing, but it is hard to enforce and wasteful bycatch has not been reduced. 4 problems with the ITQ system are: 1. It transfers public ownership to private fishers, but still makes the public responsible for cost of management and enforcement. 2. Small fishing vessels and companies may be squeezed out if they can't afford to buy ITQs from others. 3. Poaching may increase. And 4. Fishing quotas often set too high, so leave 10 to 50% of estimated MSY as buffer to protect the fishery from decline. Coastal and inland wetlands are important reservoirs of aquatic biodiversity. They provide ecological and economic services. Despite their ecological value, the U.S. has lost more than half of its coastal and inland wetlands since 1900. An ambitious restoration project is trying to undo the human damage in South Florida's Everglades. The natural Everglades is half its original size and is drying out, leaving it vulnerable to fire and invasion by non-native species. 90% of the wading birds are gone, and other vertebrates are reduced in number, 75 to 95%. Loss of water flow and input from crop fields in cities has caused large algal blooms on the bay. These blooms threaten coral reefs, hinder diving, fishing, and the tourist industry of the bay and the Florida Keys. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers has begun a restoration project funded by the state and the federal government to restore the meandering river and flow of water to the Everglades. It has several ambitious goals: restore curving flow of more than half of the Kissimmee River, remove 250 miles of canals and levees south of Lake Okeechobee, buy 93 square miles of farmland and allow it to flood to create artificial marshes, create 18 large reservoirs to ensure water for South Florida's present and future population and the lower Everglades, build new canals, reservoirs, and pumping stations to capture and return to the Everglades 80% of the water flowing out of the sea. Invasions by non-native species have upset the ecological functioning of the Great Lakes for decades, with more invaders coming. At least 162 non-native species have invaded the Great Lakes since the 1920s. Measures have been taken to control a number of these species. Sea lampreys are one of the biggest threats and have depleted a number of the sport fish species in the lakes. Zebra mussels were brought into the lakes in ballast and have become very aggressive pests since they have no known natural enemies. They have displaced native mussel species, clogged pipes, piers, and fouled beaches, and have spread to other parts of the U.S. Quagga mussels invaded the Great Lakes in 1991, and Asian carp may be the next invader. Rivers and streams are important ecological and economic resources, but they can be degraded by overfishing, pollution, dams, and water withdrawal. Sustainable management of freshwater fish involves encouraging populations of commercial/sport fish species, prevents overfishing, and reduces or eliminates less desirable fish populations. regulate fishing seasons and the number and the size of fish taken, improve habitats, breed genetically resistant fish varieties, and judicious use of antibiotics and disinfectants to control predators, parasites, and diseases are methods suggested. Congress has established a tiered classification scheme. Wild rivers are relatively inaccessible. They are not permitted to be widened, straightened, dredged, filled, or dammed. Scenic rivers are free from dams, mostly undeveloped or great scenic value, and accessible in some places by road. Recreational rivers are readily accessible by roads and may have some dams or development along their shores. Only 0.2% of the 3.5 million miles of rivers are protected under the Act, and 17% of the total river length has dams and reservoirs on them. Complete the mapping of the world's terrestrial and aquatic biodiversity so we know what we have and therefore can make the conservation efforts more precise and cost-effective. Keep intact the world's remaining old-growth forests and seize all logging of such forests. Identify and preserve the world's terrestrial and aquatic biodiversity hotspots and areas where deteriorating ecosystem services threaten people and many other forms of life. Protect and restore the world's lakes and river systems, which are the most threatened ecosystems of all. Carry out ecological restoration projects worldwide to heal some of the damage we have done and to increase the share of the Earth's land and water allotted to the rest of nature. Find ways to make conservation financially rewarding for people who live in or near terrestrial and aquatic reservoirs so they can become partners in the protection and sustainable use of the reserves.